Lisa. I'm delighted today to be joined by Oliver Von Landsberg Sadie, founder and CEO of BCB Group. Hi, Oliver.
Hey, Tina. How you doing?
Great, thank you. And Farzad Pezeshkpour, director at LAB577. Hey, Faz.
Hi, Tina.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Well, welcome so much to both of you. Today, we're here to talk about your recent collaboration that's culminated in the launch of the BLINC network, and that has been designed to facilitate instant settlement for both fiat currencies and digital assets. So pretty exciting stuff. So many of our viewers may already know, and it might not be that they understand the vernacular around it, but one of the biggest challenges that we face in crypto trader space over the years has been treasury management across the many trading venues that are out there, especially the fiat leg of that. So Oliver, can you start us off and tell us what exactly BLINC is and why you've brought it to market? Which customers is it servicing? Which trading venues, liquidity providers are you working with, etc.?
I think your hook on treasury management there is a good one. It certainly helps large organizations in the crypto space to move money where it needs to be much quicker than they could do through traditional payment rails. That kind of superpower is also super useful for arbitraging gaps in the market. So where there are trading inefficiencies at venues which have different liquidity positions and therefore have slightly disconnected prices, a trader can quickly switch between these venues by moving money fast over BLINC. This is just not possible if you're trying to do it over SEPA or SWIFT or any of the traditional networks. We've seen a great precedent in the US for USD services. So what BLINC is here to do is to fill a gap in the European market and eventually the Asian market as well, to cover GBP, Euro, Swiss francs, eventually USD too, either whether independently or via partnership is TBC. But it's really to solve those problems. The kind of clients we're looking at are exchanges who are the hubs of industry, market makers who move the biggest sums across those hubs. And then I guess one layer down, it's the traders, the funds, the retail services, the commercial services, all of those, other pillars of this industry who need that fiat support, not just for trading, but also, to pay their staff. So by providing the payment rails in traditional fiat currencies, and then this BLINC layer on top of those, which carries other digital assets as well, we're really starting to see our impact in the market in how it's making things a little more efficient and how it's reducing friction. And cost.
Yeah. So many of our viewers will know that there's been a long-running standoff between the public blockchain purists on one side and the various proponents of private or enterprise solutions utilizing the technology in a more kind of federated fashion on the other side. Faz, you and your co-founders at LAB577 previously worked together, as you mentioned, with R3, Corda, banking consortia, etc. And you were pretty influential in the design when you were working at RBS. So you've now developed BLINC in partnership with BCB to help solve the public blockchain problem. Can you tell us a little bit more about the technology itself that underpins DASL, and what is the out-of-the-box, Corda element? What is proprietary to you?
Sure. So DASL is first and foremost, the way you would experience is through an API, pretty straightforward, simple API. It's designed to be agnostic. So when you look at the API, you don't suddenly go into the depths of Corda. You don't necessarily go into the minutiae of Corda, and it kind of gives you that separation that makes it easier to integrate with. And then it has a layer which sits directly above Corda. That layer can be plugged with others, but that's what it's using under the hood. Corda is really great in terms of its atomicity, its finality, its resiliency. There's a lot of things that we really like about it from an enterprise perspective. And we use Corda plus a couple of other libraries that are available. So some of the libraries that we're talking about, accounts SDK, token SDK, those are ones that kind of have been developed with some of the work that we've done as well. So early work that we did with Corda, developing tokens on Corda, that sort of has fed and influenced, I think, some of this work that's happening in token SDK. So it uses those constructs, but it adds on top of that some level of descriptors for assets and definition of assets in a way which are really flexible and easy to manage, rather than having to code everything inside Kotlin, inside Corda. So it gives us kind of like really nice layer that allows us to quickly define new asset types. And it also has a really rock solid settlement engine behind it that utilizes our state machine, which is quite proprietary, I suppose, to DASL, and allows for really secure, consistent tracking of asset transfers, of settlement requests, and so on. So in summary, agnostic at the very top, the firmaments under the hood are definitely all Corda, and then in the middle we have a set of technologies that make it easier to use and is to make it more secure in terms of the tracking of transactions. That's it in a nutshell.
So Oliver, BCB is regulated in both Switzerland and the UK. And, naturally there are regulatory obligations, risk assessments that go with, remaining compliant, and also working to safeguard customers' funds with the relationships that you have with, major banks. So I just kind of wanted to talk through a couple of those risk factors and find out a little bit more about how you've dealt with them. So first, I guess, what's the reaction from regulators been when you've introduced these new technologies or these new ways to kind of manage treasury?
That's a great question. And I think, getting the UK license was probably a lot more difficult than the Swiss license. I guess the combination of the UK being a little, the FINMA versus FCA, they're very different organizations, and they've differently progressed against different measures. But I think having a license as an authorized payments institution in this country and being 100% dedicated to the crypto industry is still a first, and it's still an only thing. And I think what we really had to demonstrate was that the risks that underpin the crypto industry are in essence a lot more manageable than the risks that we see in the fiat industry. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to trace movement of money on a blockchain than it is to trace a suitcase full of dollar bills. Mm-hmm. So it takes a lot of myth busting, a lot of collaborative research as well. FCA are not doing this in a vacuum. We're not applying for this progression of regulation in a vacuum. It's a dialogue, and one that we hope will, open up the pathways for more organizations to participate in a clearly risk-managed way.
And lastly, so why did you choose to, understanding all of those risks and the obligations, why did you choose LAB577 and Corda versus other solutions?
I think if we look at the menu of choices, the menu is growing. I mean, there's, Ethereum, for a start, is probably the most well-known programmable ledger. And we can broaden the scope and look at other fantastic protocols like Ripple and Stellar, even Hyperledger, which is a kind of a meta protocol. And then we look at Corda. Each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. I think one of the most important considerations is the boundary between anonymity and privacy. Mm-hmm. So what we want is a private network. What we don't want is an anonymous network. Mm-hmm. What we do want is a network that understands the financial institutions that are trying to engage in this space, and that is not geared towards these extremely meta tech projects, which are blockchains of blockchains of blockchains. Yeah. And what we arrive at as the most credible solution, in my view, is Corda. And out of Corda sprang Faz's work on and his company's work on the DASL layer above that. But what's cool about DASL, and why I don't even need to lose sleep on which ledger to choose, is that it is it is agnostic to the underlying blockchain. So if for whatever reason Corda doesn't work out, I mean, blockchains come and go, who knows? You can it can speak to other networks, and it really needs that adaptability to evolve and survive over what is an extremely fast-paced evolution in this industry.
So, Fuzz, working on these legacy payment, clearing, and settlement systems in your previous career, where are you starting to see the most traction in traditional markets? And what's the sales process like, or the inception process, that kind of advocating when you're trying to crack into these larger and less agile organizations?
Yeah, so definitely we are seeing traction by some significant market participants, some of which are public already. So they've been announced, if you like, and they're doing some sincere and the hard work really to get there. And others who are just examining the potential, and they're talking to firms like ours to see what's possible. So we are working really hard with all of those individuals, all those parties there. We've got a few engagements already. So in the past, when I worked on payment systems, I know of a few, and one of them, for example, was done between a major national first-tier bank and a sovereign entity. I'm not going to go into the specifics, but the bit that was interesting there is that the communication pipeline between the two parties was encrypted. It was mutual TLS. It had cryptographic signatures on either side on a payload basis. It was using messaging technologies like AMQP. So if you, and I've spoken to that team as well, and I said, well, if you just simply squint your eyes and blur a little bit, that's exactly what Corda does. That's exactly how it's working. There's no magic to blockchains. It's been overhyped maybe in some aspects, but if you really look at the internals, that's actually how we build mission-critical systems. So that's actually helped level the concerns, if you like, to a point where we're kind of saying, okay, so it's the JVM, fine, it's using TLS and we're using SHA-256 and we're using these particular elliptic curves for signatures and so on and so forth. And then you kind of go, well, actually, we all know this stuff. Yeah. It's not that difficult, really. That helps sort of open the possibilities. And now what some institutions that we've been working with are looking at are saying, well, okay, we don't want to do interbank transfers, but we're geographically located all around the world. We have entities in the US, in the Netherlands, in the UK, and can we have an internet network for ourselves, just so that we can settle our books at the end of the day without having the complexities of international payments and so on involved there.
So it feels like this BLINC project is well conceived, solving a problem that exists today. It's a great partnership between two companies that see eye to eye and working well together. I'll ask this question to both of you. What other critical problems do you guys have your eyes on and think that similar types of collaborations could solve?
I think I'll have a quick go at this one, Fuzz. I'm going to put a kind of, I guess, a regulatory lens on, because it's helpful to think of markets through a regulatory lens, because that's what's ultimately going to shape what really takes hold in the next few years. So if we consider the kind of market efficiency role of regulators, I think that's something that we're beginning to address here with wider channels. If we look at consumer protection, that's also something that a network like this addresses. I think the third and biggest opportunity ahead is the representation of equities and other real-world assets on the blockchain, because that's, I think, where DASL will truly shine.
We're doing quite a lot of work in that space at the moment. Yeah, so we're really excited about what's coming for the end of this year and the beginning of next year. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we'll
Yeah.
have you back to tell us more about what you're working on when you can talk about it in a little bit more detail.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining me. Faz, Oliver, it was great to have you. And wish you both the very best with BLINC, BCB, and with LAB577.